To answer Paul's question about which Paul the fourth Paul was, I think the answer is neither of us, because when before the Storm King Art Center bought that piece of sculpture, it was in a catalog that's for Paul, and I thought that meant I owned it, but it said collection of the artist, and it turns out Ursula owned it. I didn't even know it said for Paul. I would just like to say how incredibly moved I was by this presentation of Sandra Day O'Connor. I had no idea that the discrimination in the legal profession was even more intense than in the scientific profession. It's in every profession, that's true. Well, that's what I'm learning. I think that if I get another big prize, Urs and I should endow a Pearl Meister Greengard Prize for the legal profession, for outstanding women in law. Sandra Day O'Connor would be the first recipient. At the time that Urs and I made our decision to use the Nobel Prize money to endow an annual prize for women, dedicated to recognizing great accomplishment in biomedical research, I had greatly underestimated the extent to which women in science still feel a great deal of discrimination. The intensity with which women feel this discrimination became clear to me from the many letters and emails of congratulations that I received upon the announcement of the Nobel Prize. About 40% of the congratulatory messages came from women, and unbelievably, every single one of these letters from women emphasized how much it meant to them that we had made the decision to establish this prize for women scientists. And I'd like to read to you very briefly from one of these letters, just to illustrate the emotional impact that it had. Dear Professor Greengard, you don't know me. We have never met. Your depth of heart has changed my life, though, and so I wanted to write to you to express my gratitude. Last night, as my fiancé and I were preparing dinner, we heard you speak briefly during a national public radio broadcast. You were telling the interviewer of your plans to donate the funds from your Nobel Prize Award to benefit women who had made major contributions in the field of biomedical research. When you uttered that sentence, my fiancé and I were on opposite sides of the kitchen with our backs turned to one another. We both turned to look at the other one simultaneously, our eyes filling with tears. She goes on, the world I live in became larger in that moment. I know that the research you do and your ongoing generosity changes the lives of many people every single day. I just wanted to let you know that your heart and spirit yesterday changed mine. Although that letter was exceptional in the eloquence of its expression, the sentiments were typical of those expressed in the letters that I received from many other of the women who wrote. Reading those letters gave Ursula and me enormous joy and made us realize the extent of the impact of our action. It was one thing for me to see it intellectually, the discrimination, but the emotional impact I should have been but wasn't aware of. The journey from the donation of the prize money that day 4 years ago to this evening's ceremony was assisted by many individuals whom I would like briefly to thank. First, I would like to thank the many people who contributed to the endowment spontaneously upon hearing of its existence. These included David Rockefeller, Michael Stern, Sarah Peter, Jean and Richard Fisher, Connie and Bill Lieber, Barbara and Jeffrey Pickauer, Patricia and Emmanuel Gantz, Carol and Roger Einiger, and Isabel and Richard Furlow. Next, I would like to acknowledge with gratitude the members of the awards committee. Torsten Wiesel did a wonderful job as chairman, and he mentioned the other people, but they just worked so hard and did such a great job. I'm going to mention them again. Richard Axel, Gunter Blobel, Tisha DeLong, Joseph Goldstein, Paul Nurse, David Sabatini, and Shirley Tillman. At the time this committee was formed, 5 of the members were Nobel laureates. Earlier this month, another member of the committee, Richard Axel, was anointed by Stockholm. So now 6 out of the 8 committee members are Nobel laureates. My advice to those scientists in the audience who would like to win a Nobel Prize is join the committee as soon as possible. There are only a couple of openings left. Next, I would like to thank the Rockefeller University and particularly Marnie Imhoff and Paul Nurse for their vital roles in developing this award. Marnie worked very closely with Ursula and me over these 4 years to bring this dream to reality. Paul Nurse was extremely supportive of this program in every way and enthusiastically committed the necessary administrative staff and resources to execute the project. In fact, it was Paul who conceived the idea of selecting a woman of great accomplishment in a field other than biomedical research to present the award. The result was the selection of the wonderful Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman to be appointed to the United States Supreme Court. I guess you're sort of like Madame Curie in our field. Finally, I would like to thank Justice O'Connor for taking time from her arduous schedule to participate in this ceremony. I had the pleasure of meeting her on 2 previous occasions and was delighted that she was selected by the committee to do the presentation. Her commitment to and interest in intellectual achievement can be exemplified by the fact that she came to the Nobel ceremonies at the Swedish Embassy in Washington in November 2000, when the Supreme Court was deep in the throes of dealing with the disputed Florida vote in the Gore-Bush election. She told us at the time that these festivities, this celebration of intellectual achievement, was the only event which she was permitting herself to attend during that hectic period. I am sure that everyone in this room fervently hopes that she and her colleagues on the Supreme Court have an easier time this November. And I mentioned that to her, and she said she strongly shared that sentiment. In conclusion, my wife and I are deeply grateful to all of you who are present today, and particularly to the many individuals who have contributed in so many ways to the establishment of this award. Ursula and I thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. Thank you all very much.